I'm here at Schoolhouse Beach on the Sonoma coast. I have my new setup with the umbrella. I'm going to try that out. I have a new sun hat. I'm tailgating right off the beach and I'm excited to get going. Hello, love. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Laurel Keller. I'm an acrylic and mixed media artist and instructor, and this is the Wild at Art Show. All right, let's look for a composition. I have this cove with a beach, and I can do a big, expansive, sweeping seascape, or I can hone in and get more of the sand, or I could do this cliff, which is right across the way, including some of the rocks out in the water. It's a beautiful day. I think I'm going to do this cliff and the distant mountain. So the first thing I'm going to do is sketch out the composition with burnt sienna. I've toned the canvas in burnt sienna with a wash, and I'm just going to sketch out the nuts and bolts, the shapes, the rocks in the water, and the way the sand comes around on the beach. Then I have my horizon line, which I'm going to pop in here. There are two jutting out land masses. There's the one in the midground, and there's also a mountain in the background, which is going to be pushed back. It's a little bit fainter with the atmospheric perspective. And then I'll pop in more of the rocks that are along the line of the water. Some small ones, and there are a few big ones out there as well. I've just moved to Sonoma County, which is really exciting. Many of you know me from Sacramento, which is about 2 hours away, and I've just moved to Petaluma. My husband got a job in Novato, which is right over the county line in Marin County, but we are staying in Sonoma County, which is about a half an hour from the ocean. Here I've changed the perspective of the camera so that you don't see quite as much glare. And I'm just adjusting some of these lines. Next, I'm just adding some shadow color. I have a dark purple going. There's dioxazine purple, burnt sienna, and Payne's gray in this mixture. It's nice and dark for my shadows. And I'm applying those down at the base of this cliff and just establishing those shadows. So painting out on the coast has been something that I've been doing for quite some time. I've led retreats in this area. I've painted this particular beach before. And the cool thing is that every time you paint out at a beach, you can get a different perspective and do a different painting, even though it's the same place. So if you'd like to see more of me painting out on the ocean, this is kind of what I'm doing right now. We're renting a small place in Petaluma, and I don't have room for a studio at home, so I will be painting outside a lot. And if you're interested in this kind of content, please like this video, and let's get into some more of this color that I'm applying. So here I'm applying my distant ocean color. And my cat's making a little bit of noise in the background as I record this audio. So if you hear some scrabbling, that's her. And I'm taking that blue color and applying it into the sky as well with a little bit of white. And the thing about painting at the ocean is that you get a very nice unobstructed view of the horizon. And the sky always gets a little bit lighter at the horizon line. So I add white and do a nice gradient coming down towards the horizon. Now I'm painting with this umbrella for the first time. Usually I'm just out in the direct sunlight. And I'm having a little bit of a challenge with it. The colors are a little bit darker in the shade of the umbrella, which is nice because there's less drying time, or there's more drying time, and I can work with the paint a little bit longer. But on the other hand, I also have a hard time adjusting my eyes from the bright scene back to the shaded canvas, which is throwing me just a little bit because I'm not used to it. So it's a challenge that I'm adjusting with. I am checking my colors against the scene, holding my brush up to the landscape and comparing my brush to what's out there. And then just working with the colors on the canvas, getting a change in blues as we come closer to the beach. And this is just a base coat right now. I'm just blocking in the colors. There's a wave out there that I'm going to pop in, so I'm making that a little bit darker. But for now, I just want to get paint down on the canvas, and I can make changes to the values and the tones later. Adding some darker blue to the base of the water where the rocks meet the water, just to hint at some shadows under there. And now for my sand color. Sand, many people think of sand as being very yellow, but in actuality, at many beaches around this area, it's more of a gray. And, it's just one of those things that I have to play with. So now I'm reestablishing more shadow down at the base of the cliffs and carrying it up pretty far, because the cracks in the rock of this cliff do go all the way up. And now I'm just checking the light, kind of moving my umbrella out of the way. I actually end up taking the umbrella off because it was throwing me quite a bit. I'm just not used to it. But it's something that I'm going to continue to try out and challenge myself with. Just for now, it's my first day back out plein air painting in quite some time, in a few months. And I just wanted to have a good time and not have to think too hard. So I ended up going back to my normal ways. But for now, I'm just continuing on with the shaded canvas, getting more blues into the foreground of the water. And the sun, or actually the sky color, is reflected off of the face of the water here. So I'm putting in more of that sky color where there's a lot of reflection, and having it come right up against the back of that wave. Getting some texture going, keeping the shadows so that they make sense at where the rocks meet the water. Now I'm going to work on that distant mountain. It's another gray that's similar to the sand color. It's a little bit more blue, and the atmosphere changes the color of land. And so I just paint this cooler and lighter than the land in the foreground. And there's a forest at the top of the mountain, so that color is a little bit darker. There's less white in it, and there's some grassy areas peeking through the forest at the top of the mountain. So that's about it for blocking in the colors. If you like how this is going so far, be sure and subscribe, and I'll be doing a lot more videos like this. Next, I'm working on some of the rock in the cliff. And this rock is fairly gray. There's some warm, more burnt siennas at the base, and then it goes to a gray, and then there are some more yellow tones, like a yellow ochre up at the top. And here is when I started struggling with the shade of the umbrella, especially. I was having a hard time translating the colors from looking out at that bright scene and then taking them back to my canvas. And you can see when I lift the umbrella, they just seem a little bit askew. So I'm gonna try to take this as far as I can. I'm still working along. Here I'm adding the greenery at the top of the cliff. There's a lot of ice plant up there, which is a succulent that's common on the coast here. But I felt like all of my colors were just a little bit off. So I took off the umbrella, and now I'm getting faster drying time, which means that I can layer more quickly. And I'm also seeing this scene in different light. There's a good reason to shade the canvas, which is that when you bring a painting inside after you do plein air, it's often dark because you were working in bright light. So I'm going to attempt to make this scene a little bit lighter than it looks in real life here in direct sunlight, so that when I bring it in, it will still have all of the right values, the highlights and the shadows. So now I'm just reestablishing my shadows, getting that nice contrast going. And this is where there's shadow under the rock, but also the rock is very wet, so it gets darker. And all of those lovely cracks. I try and not get too lost in all of the details. I want to keep this really nice and simple and get the feeling and the movement of the scene. So I breeze over a lot of details and just allow this painting to have its own energy and be accurate for the sake of being a painting and not a complete replica of this scene. Now I have some blue on my canvas. The rocks have some deeper shadows in them now. The light has changed slightly out in what I can see because the sun is moving, and the shadows have become a little bit more exaggerated than they were when I started. So I'm just bringing in more shadow at the base of the rock, taking out some of the details that don't make quite as much sense when you look at the painting. And now I'm starting the seafoam. Seafoam is one of my favorite additions. The painting seems to come alive when I add this. And so I'm keeping my brush strokes fairly horizontal, even though the line of the water is on the diagonal. The waves and ripples in the water are going to be horizontal here, and then they trail back where it's breaking up from that wave. I'll also add white to the base of the rocks to give it some splash. Now I'm trying to correct the green that I used. There's a second little tier on that cliff. You can see over the cliff, and there's just a hint of a distant cliff. But when I started working on this in real life, in the painting, it seemed like it was confusing to the eye. So I decided to combine them. I just combined them into one cliff because it seemed like it was visually confusing. Now I'm warming up the oranges, that rich burnt sienna, and allowing that to pop through down at the base, and then bringing the yellow of the rock that's more of a sandstone up at the top. So the rock is a little bit more of a solid, hard rock down at the base, and then up top it's more of a sandstone, so it's got a more yellow feeling. And then the ice plant on the top of the cliff had these rich, warm tones. It changes a little bit, the actual plant itself. So I'm bringing in some warm tones, and then I'm going to actually layer over the top of that to coordinate it a little bit more. Here I am bringing in more highlights into the face of the rock. And you can see I have a ways to go in getting those rocks just right. But for now, I have some blue on my brush, and I'm bringing in a bit of blue into these areas where there is more of an orange, brown color. And the blue and the warmth of this area of the painting will play really nicely together because they are opposites on the color wheel. And then I'll layer over that even more just to make it a richer, deeper painting. Okay. Now coming in with more gray. So the gray is going to bridge that area between the yellows and the warm tones at the bottom, and layering over some of that warmth up at the top. You can see it in the ice plant down on the beach past my painting. There's that warmth in the ice plant, but it turns from more of a brick color to a green. All right, now back to the water. I'm letting that cliff dry up, and I'll come back to that. And now I'm just going to work on a wave. So I've got the breaking wave here. It seemed a little bit too straight. And again, it's my first painting out in a while, and I felt a little bit out of practice, but I wanted to get in these nice aqua tones. So I'm bringing those in where the light is shining through the wave. And I need to make this a little bit more of a smooth transition. So I'm mixing some shadow into that now and just having it come down smoothly. And at this point, it looks really good in hindsight, but in the moment, I was getting sort of frustrated. So I decided to wipe it out. I just went through with a base color and just kind of erased it. And that's the great thing about acrylic paint, is that you can just take out details and then bring them back in so quickly because it dries. Okay, so yeah, here I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is out of control. So I just took it out. And now I'm coming back with a more swoopy shadow. This is where you can see down into the water, and it's darker. It's like a little window looking down into the water, and then gradually it's going to get more green and lighter where the sun is coming through the water. And I want it to smooth out really nicely into the top of the water in front. So now I'm coming back in. I believe there's a little bit of blue mixed in with this white. And I'm just scrubbing in where the sea foam is, where the wave is breaking. And then on the face of the water, I'm bringing this color up in value to more of a sky color. And it's just fun to be at the water and see what everyone's doing. Here's the guy fishing, I'm painting. People are just enjoying their day. So even when you get frustrated plein air painting, it helps to just take a moment to appreciate how fun it is and not get too caught up in all the little details. Okay, so I'm letting my wave dry. I'm going to come back and work on that a little bit more, but for now I'm just bringing in some highlights into my rocks. There is a blue tint to this, and this is where the sun is going to hit it. I'm checking my canvas with my umbrella just to see how it's looking without the direct sunlight on it, because I don't want it to get too washed out or too low in contrast. I want high contrast so that when I bring it back inside, it's going to pop still. So I've decided to bring in a lighter gray, and I can tell you this helped a lot when I brought it back inside. So even though this seems really light, when the sun isn't directly on the canvas, it does darken up quite a bit inside. So I just want to push my values. I'm going to push those highlights up. And then just texturizing and following the contour of the rocks. All right. Now I'm coming in and reestablishing some highlights in my yellows. There's always a point in the painting where I start to feel like I'm fussing maybe a little too bit, but it's also important to be able to get the right feeling inside in my gut when the painting is done, and I'm just not there yet. So I am coming through with more layers of color so that it starts to feel right. There's something about the top here where it's feeling a little bit too, it feels too bright, but I am still going for those highlights so that when I bring the painting back inside, it doesn't seem too dark. And this is something that I recently have become more aware of. I have to translate this in my head a little bit. Is it dark enough? Is it light enough? Do I have enough contrast? Do I have enough shadows? And are the colors right? So I always change them a little bit with that translation so that the painting is appealing. It's not about what I see exactly. I'm not a human camera. I have creative freedom where I can make changes. I can make the browns richer and more orange. I can make the highlights lighter. I can deepen the shadows. I can change shapes. I can change where things are lined up on the canvas or where they sit in the plane of distance. It's all fine when you're an artist as long as the painting is working. And that's what we're really going for, is that translation. All right, now I'm brightening my waves just a little bit. I want to make sure that they're popping off the canvas. I don't want things to seem too straight either. They seem a little bit too straight right now. So I'm going to bring back some more seafoam. I'm going to make the shapes just a little bit different and varied because it was just a little bit too perfect. So I'm just letting myself be expressive with the movement of that foam. All right, so I signed the piece. I think it might be done. And every time I sign something, I go back and notice a few things later. But, that's okay. I just wanted to add a few more shadows under the foam. I always step back a lot after I sign a piece. And stepping back is something I try to do throughout the painting process. It's so important to step back. I can't stress that enough. So I'm just evaluating what needs to happen. And I decided to put a few trails behind the wave so that it had a little bit more movement and a little bit more of a pop on that foam. All right, and then going back into my rocks for a little bit more as well. And it's a good time to mention that I have a class on Skillshare called Plein Air Like a Pro. Skillshare is an online community where you can learn all sorts of different creative practices. It's kind of like the Netflix for online learning with creativity. So my class, Plein Air Like a Pro, covers all sorts of things like where to go, how to pick a spot, what to bring, how to approach painting when light and weather are factors. And I go through my process of setup, breakdown, materials, and also how to paint a landscape. I go through 4 paintings in the class, and many of them are done in Sonoma County. It's one of my favorite places to paint. If you're in Sonoma County, you can also learn with me in person. I am more than happy to meet folks out on the coast. We can go set up. All you need is materials, an easel, and we'll just hang out, and I'll give you pointers for painting a scene as we see it in front of us, what to really look for, and how to manage some of these variables that come up inevitably while we're doing plein air. It just needs to be a dry day, and we can go out and have a great time on the coast together. Or even inland. I like painting hills without oceans in them as well. All right, I'm just gonna lighten up my sky a little bit more. Just give that one extra layer, really soft layer. The light is changing, and I decided to add some of the light that is new into the rocks. But for the most part, this is, turning out really great. You have to be very changeable. All right, so that is the painting. If you want more inspiration, I'm going to leave a related video and a playlist for you here. I hope you had fun watching this, and I will see you in the next video. Much love.